All right, guys, this is gonna be the top 3 exercises that I would do if I wanted to jump higher, the 3 lifts that I would add into my workout routine. This could apply to like a dunker, or this could apply to a bodybuilder, or really any athlete that just wants to jump higher. These are the 3 lifts or exercises that I would integrate into the training. And as you guys know, I coach many of the highest jumpers in the world. You guys know I work with Rivera, and Donovan Hawkins lives with me, Josh Rubel lives with me, Dom Gonzalez lives with me, and we have people coming into the house all the time. Hopefully you guys have picked that up. So I have a little bit of skin in the game, and hopefully you guys can take me at my word, or if not, look it up. So the first lift that I like to put in every single one of my high performance athletes training that want to jump higher is going to be power cleans. And the reason why I love the Olympic lifts is because they train RFD, but they don't train RFD in just one way. They do it in a lot of different facets and a lot of different manners. So they're gonna teach athletes how to coordinate moving around an object that's relatively heavy while generating a lot of force through their legs. Now, force is not just irrespective of time, and this is why this lift outperforms many things like, I don't know, a squat or a leg extension. Like, this is probably the lift I most commonly program for guys to jump higher and be a better athlete. And the reason for that is, again, because if you can't do a power clean, you've probably got other deficits that are also going to be limiting you in your long-term athletic progression. So I really like putting them in the training because they teach you to be an athlete. They're also fun as hell, and they're easy to progress. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, what about the coordination, or what about mobility? I would tell you, irrespective of that, I don't care if you're not mobile enough. I don't care if they're hard to learn. They're worth learning if you want to jump higher. And I'm telling you that doing them is going to make you jump higher. And if you're not doing them, you should be doing them. Now, when it comes to the actual prescription of these, I like to start with clean pulls, and I like to coach the lift from the ground up. I have a couple videos on my channel where I go through, or Isaiah does, where I go through the power clean and how I would recommend progressing it. But you want to start pulling from the floor first and learning the first pull. Now, it's different than a deadlift. I think a lot of people get confused, and that's because, or in the way it's different than a deadlift, is a deadlift, you're just picking the weight up and you're not getting into certain positions that are going to allow you to apply a lot of force. And if you're hearing this and you're still confused and you don't know which of these lifts you want to do, or you don't know how to integrate them, or you have a lot of other questions, or maybe this is just scratching the surface for you, go to teachmestrength.com and sign up, and we'll write all the lifts for you and teach you how to integrate these for yourself and give you the best possible program. So a deadlift, you set yourself up more vertically sometimes. You are allowed to let the shoulders rise early. In a clean, you don't do that. You want to keep your shoulders over the bar. You want to keep the bar close to over the ankle. And I've worked with a lot of super high level Olympic weightlifting coaches, one of which was Vance Newgard, who coached my good friend Kenny Wilkins and his wife Taylor Turner Wilkins. And Taylor's like a world-class weightlifter. Now, Taylor has never, ever done jump training, right? Not one time. But she's an Olympic weightlifter, so she does a lot of the same lifts that I recommend for jumping athletes. She was hanging out with us the other day, and she went up and touched like a 24-inch vertical or something like that. And she, mind you, has never, or no, I think it was 22. She has never, ever once done like an approach jump. She literally was like a dancer or something like that. So maybe she had done it in high school 10 years ago or whatever, and I think a softball player. But she's not like a jumping athlete, and she doesn't have like great leverage for jumping high, but she's so freaking powerful because she does a lot of power cleans or power snatch. Now, I like the power snatch. I really like full snatch, and I like full clean, but when it comes to meeting the demands of jumping, power clean works really well because it's faster than what you get in a full clean. A full clean is slower. You're gonna have a slower second pull, you're gonna have a slower pull off the floor, the bar's not gonna travel as high. The power outputs might be crazy high, but you can get power a lot of different ways. You can get power from, oh, there's an ambulance. Excuse me. You can get power from throwing a baseball, or you can get power from throwing a shot put. And it's dictated by how fast you're moving it and the weight of that object. So if you wanna generate a lot of power, then, and we know power is important for running fast and jumping high, then you need to pick a weight where you can move it very fast or relatively fast that is relatively heavy. Am I moving 405 pounds like a deadlift? No, but if I can move 225, at 4x or 5x the speed, let's say the second pull lasts, after the double knee bend, 200 milliseconds, then I'm gonna get way more out of the lift when it comes to it improving my vertical. So I skipped over this, but I want to go back and touch on prescription. So I would give most people anywhere from 5 to 8 sets. Start there, and the ranges for reps is basically 4 and under. Because it's a power exercise, you don't want to have very high rep ranges. The only time I would do that is when someone's learning the movement and it's just like a barbell, but in that case I would just call it a warm-up. When you're actually getting into the workout, of those, like, let's say it's 6 sets, I would have the last 3 sets be relatively heavy, meaning anywhere from, if it's a power clean, anywhere from 70 to, this old lady's getting excited. That's awesome. Anywhere from 70 to 85% in the lift. And this will allow you to check a lot of different boxes when it comes to the power equation that I was talking about. So it allows you to address speed strength and strength speed. If you're moving 70% relatively fast, that's going to be advantageous for power development. If you're moving 85 or 90%, that's going to be beneficial. If you're moving the 85 or 90%, it probably has a little bit less of a carryover to 1-foot jumping, I've seen. But 2-foot jumping, generally speaking, the better you are at the Olympic lifts and the more weight you can do, the better you're gonna jump. Isaiah's vertical has consistently climbed up concurrently with his power clean. I think early on when I started working with him, he did about 225, and now he's at like 325 or something like that. And it's not a one-to-one thing, but as that cluster has increased, his vertical has also increased. And that same thing I found to be true with pretty much all of my athletes, is that when I see those metrics going up and they haven't had a big jumping day, it's soon to come. So that's why I love the lift. I would recommend doing them like 2 to 3 days a week. It's awesome. Okay, second one is gonna be the back squat, and not just a back squat, I'm gonna say the deep back squat. Now the reason why, and even more so, I would say a deep upright back squat with intent. Now the reason why I love this lift is because it requires a lot of mobility in your hip and ankle. And while I'm not like a movement or like, these quote unquote like movement mobility specialists like gurus, I do think that there is a prerequisite mobility that you need to be a good athlete and to be a good jumper. If you watch Isaiah, you watch Donovan, you watch Josh, you watch Dom, they all have pretty good hip mobility and they all have relatively good ankle mobility. Now, not all of them started that way, and I personally am not that way. And I think that by doing that and working on it, allowed them to build a really good base for what was to come, meaning they could get up to a point where they can squat very heavy, and they can be in good positions, and they can generate a lot of force. And that's one of the stronger indicators I've seen of whether someone's gonna jump higher, specifically off 2 feet. Now off 1 foot, I think a power clean is probably gonna be better, honestly. Like, it's much more of an indicator. We did a data collection a little while back, and then I had another friend do it as well for high jumpers. And for 1 foot jumpers, it is an incredibly strong indicator of how you're gonna jump. It's like, what is your power clean relative to your body weight? You see tons of high jumpers where, their power clean is 300 pounds and they weigh 150 pounds. Like my friend Mikey Hoffer's like that. And it's very common. Fabian's the same way. But in a deep squat, it's not necessarily as much as an indicator, but it is an indicator of success, but it's an indicator of health. It's an indicator of your load tolerance. It's an indicator of your tendon quality and your load capacity in the tendon, and a lot of other important indices for performance. So that's the second one I really like. I'd recommend, if you're wanting to do this and add it into your workout, I'd probably put it in, start 2 days a week, maybe even 1. And depending on what your goal is, I'd recommend starting with higher reps. So anywhere from like 8 to 10 reps per set. And probably, you could start as low as 2 and go up to about 5 at that rep range. And then I would probably bump the sets up and the reps down. The total reps, I've gone up to like 60 total reps in a workout. That's like the upper limit. The lowest I'll go is like 18 in a workout. So you can work within that range. Start at the higher side of things. The weight has to be less, obviously, or you're not gonna be able to get through the workout. And then progress to the lower ones. Of those 18 to 60 reps, about 50% of them should be working sets, maybe less. That'd be like on the upper end is 50%. So if I give someone like 6 by 10, not all 6 sets are at, the working weights. 3 sets of the 6 are going to be at a working weight, and if I'm giving someone that much volume, it's going to be like 50% of their max for those sets. And the big thing I'm looking for is, what are your movement qualities? Like, are you upright? Do you keep your heels down? Do you come up off the heels? Do you need a heel lift? Do you have to get Ollie shoes? And I think a lot of people think I don't like deep squatting because I personally don't do it. But if I could, I would. And I do when necessary. And I do it at certain times of the year. If you're earlier on in the year, you need to do more deep squatting. If you're a 2-foot jumper, you pretty much can't not deep squat, honestly. You pretty much are always going to be doing that. You can't really ever get away from it. And that's just because I've seen it work time and time and time again. When I was at Athletic Lab, there was a kid that was training for the multi, and his back squat just kept climbing and climbing and climbing, and his clean just kept climbing and climbing and climbing. And his sprint speeds weren't really getting better, and his throws were getting a little better, and his jumps off, 1 foot weren't really getting better. But they got better, but not like to the same rate that his 2-foot vertical just was skyrocketing. And I, looking back, was like, oh, this training is incredible for 2-foot jumping. The reason for that is, well, 1, 2-foot jumping, there's a bunch of cops out. 2-foot jumping is relatively easy, but hopefully I don't get pulled over, I'm not doing anything wrong. 2-foot jumping is relatively easier. It's neurally more tolerable than 1-foot jumping. It's less sensitive to, holy shoot, there's people everywhere. It's less sensitive to fatigue. It is something where you have more time, like you have time on your side to really generate force, and that's gonna increase your long-term athletic development. There's a guy up here radaring everyone, and he's gonna try to pull me over, and if he does, that's gonna be really funny. Here we go. It's crazy. The county I live in, they like look for reasons to pull you over and give you tickets, which kind of sucks, but it just is the way it is. Anyways, so let's see if he's following me. I don't think he is. I'm not doing anything wrong, but the last lift that I would pick is going to be a posterior chain movement, and specifically the 2 that I really, really like that I think would really help you is an RDL and a hip thrust. Now, if you're a 1-foot jumper, I'm gonna go, actually both of them for 1 foot is really, really good. I've found, like, time and time again that being consistent with doing those 2 lifts strengthens your low back for 1-foot jumping, which for some reason tends to be a limiter, probably because your pelvis is getting jarred into your freaking spine, and that can be really, really provocative for long-term health, especially as you get bigger and more powerful. And RDL is gonna teach you how to brace. It's gonna teach you how to have a strong lower back as you load up more weight. And then a hip thrust, you're actually kind of unloading the spine, but you're still getting all of the benefits of doing a hip extension exercise or doing a triple extension exercise. So when you do like a hip thrust, you're getting the highest load at the top. Most people don't know that. And so that's why locking out is so important, and why sometimes I'll be like, yeah, it's not a rep. You still get a lot of benefit from it, but the difference between that and an RDL is that the bottom of the rep in an RDL is where you're gonna have the highest loading. So different lifts, each are gonna have their respective pros and cons. And I think if you're gonna add a lift that you're like, I really wanna use this to jump higher, then that's gonna be a staple as well. Hip thrust, if you have low back pain, I'd say RDL if your back is relatively heavy. Now, mind you, I would never load all 3 of these exercises heavy on the same day unless your training age is very, very high. I might power clean heavy and back squat heavy on the same day, but I'm definitely not gonna do power clean, squat, and RDL really, really heavy on the same day. It pretty much always grenades people's backs, and they have a really, really tough time bouncing back, and then they end up, kind of screwing themselves over. So, if I go 75% on the clean and 6 sets of 3, and then the squat is 5x5 or 5x6, last 3 sets at, I don't know, let's say like 75%. And then the RDLs, I might go 2x10, relatively light, like just the 135. And you might be like, well, what's the point of doing that? I'm not really increasing strength. Strength is a neural component, and it involves a lot of coordination. So it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna do more weight. It's not more weight is more better all the time. Now, there are times where I want athletes to push that number up, but it's an accessory and it's later on the lift. Rarely is it a primary lift. I think it really helps the clean in a lot of cases for guys, especially jumping athletes. because it just builds a lot of low back stability where they can handle very, very, very high forces. So I like it for that aspect. The hip thrust I've just found is a really good way to get very, very high loading without a lot of risk. Unless you have labral issues in your hip, you can pretty much load that up as much as you want, and there's not really a repercussion to it. Neurally, it's very, very stimulating, which is definitely like a major pro. My sensors are going off. This guy's filming behind me. So neurally, it is very, very stimulating. Your glutes are one of the strongest, it is probably the strongest muscle in the human body. And, that's gonna bode well for you, because the hip is ultimately what's driving performance in both 1 foot and 2 foot jumping. I've been talking a lot about on Instagram, but it is where the movement starts. It's where the energy is beginning for that whip that you get off the ground. If you have a weak hip, then your ass is weak. You're not going to be able to jump very high, and you also are going to have other problems, because if you start extending the hip too soon, or and then you're kind of like pushing through the ground with just the knee and the foot, you're not going to jump high in some cases, and then in other cases you're probably going to hurt yourself. And that's when people say like, oh, the jump felt so effortless, it was just this like progressive build of energy. That's what they mean, and that's when they are able to coordinate the jump correctly, and that's why I love the lift so much. The other side of that is that 1 foot jumping, there's not a lot of angulation at the hip, and extension at the very end happens through a very small range of motion. So it is a really good way to load up that very short aggressive pop or push into the ground at toe off, essentially, or as you're on the ball of the foot. So for this, I will actually load it up relatively heavy, even on days when I have guys cleaning and squatting really, really heavy. And the biggest reason for that is because I can, and I can benefit from it. Now, long term, sometimes I won't do it, because it will have like unintended consequences. You can flatten guys out really easily if you push it too hard, too long. But generally, I found that if they can handle it during the workout, that it is really, really worth doing. So there you have it, guys. Those are the 3 lifts that I would recommend for anyone looking to jump higher. I'll see you guys next time.